I was adjusting the oxygen tube in my mother's nose when she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for someone so close to the end. Her grip was cold, her fingers like ice against my skin, and when I looked into her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before: fear, raw, unfiltered fear that made my stomach drop. Imani, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the medical equipment. I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I pulled the chair closer to her hospital bed, my heart already racing. At 42 years old, I thought I knew everything about my mother, about our family, about the life we had built together in our modest home on the South Side. I was wrong. What is it, Mama? You need to rest. Save your strength. She shook her head, and I saw tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. My mother, who had never cried, not when my father died, not when we lost our house during the recession, not even when the doctors told her the cancer had spread to her bones, but now tears ran down her hollow cheeks. You're adopted, baby. You're not mine, not by blood. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my body recoil, felt the air leave my lungs in a rush. The room tilted sideways, and I had to grip the metal rail of her bed to steady myself. What are you saying? Your sister knows. Kaliyah knows everything. Ask her. She'll tell you the truth. I'm so sorry, Imani. I'm so sorry I waited this long. My mother's eyes fluttered closed, and the machines around her bed began to beat more urgently. A nurse rushed in, then another, and I was gently pushed aside as they worked on her. I stood there, frozen, watching them adjust tubes and check monitors, my mind unable to process what I had just heard. Adopted, not hers. Kaliyah knows everything. But before we begin, please leave us a comment telling us which state or city you're watching from. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you more compelling stories. 20 minutes later, my mother was gone. The machines fell silent, the steady beep of the heart monitor replaced by a long, flat tone that seemed to echo in my chest. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too numb, too shocked, too broken by the revelation that had come too late for questions, too late for understanding. I had always thought Kaliyah and I looked nothing alike, but I had chalked it up to genetics, to the lottery of heredity that makes siblings different. Kaliyah was tall and lean, with sharp cheekbones and skin the color of warm honey. I was shorter, rounder, with darker skin and softer features. Kaliyah had our father's eyes, everyone always said. I had always wondered whose eyes I had. Now I knew. They weren't my father's eyes, because he wasn't my father. The funeral was 3 days later. I moved through it like a ghost, shaking hands, accepting condolences, listening to stories about my mother's kindness and strength. Kaliyah stood beside me, her face composed, her hand occasionally touching my elbow in what should have been comfort but felt like lies. She knew. She had always known, and she had never told me. After the burial, after the last mourners had filtered away from our childhood home with their empty casserole dishes and their whispered sympathies, I found Kaliyah in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, her back to me, her movements mechanical and precise. She told me, I said, my voice flat. Right before she died, she told me I was adopted. Kaliyah's hand stilled in the soapy water. Her shoulders tensed, and for a long moment, she didn't turn around. When she finally did, her face was a mask I couldn't read. I know, she said quietly. I've known since I was 16. 16? The word came out as a strangled sound. You've known for 24 years, and you never said anything. Mama made me promise. She said it would destroy you, that you would never forgive her, that it would tear the family apart. She was going to tell you herself when the time was right. The time was never right, I shouted, my composure finally cracking. She waited until she was dying. She waited until there was no time left for answers, no time left for me to understand. Kaliyah flinched, but she didn't look away. There's more, Imani, more that you need to know. More? What more could there possibly be? She dried her hands slowly on a dish towel, and I noticed they were shaken. My sister, who was always so controlled, so composed, was trembling. You weren't just adopted, Imani. You were stolen. The word hung in the air between us, impossible and terrible. What? Sit down, Kaliyah said. gesturing to the kitchen table where we had eaten countless meals, where I had done my homework under our mother's watchful eye, where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. Please sit down. This is going to be hard to hear. I didn't want to sit. I wanted to run, to get in my car and drive until I reached somewhere this nightmare couldn't touch me. But my legs were already moving, carrying me to the table, lowering me into a chair. Kaliyah sat across from me, her hands folded on the worn wooden surface. In 1982, a woman named Zephyr Aldridge gave birth to a baby girl at County Hospital. The delivery was complicated. The woman hemorrhaged, and there was confusion, chaos in the delivery room. In that chaos, her baby disappeared. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What are you saying? I'm saying that baby was you, Imani. Mama was working as a nurse's aide at County Hospital that night. She had been trying to have another baby for years, but she kept miscarrying. She was desperate, grieving, not thinking straight. When she saw that baby, saw the confusion, saw the opportunity, she took you. She walked out of that hospital with you in her arms, and no one stopped her. Couldn't breathe. The kitchen walls seemed to be closing in, the familiar space suddenly foreign and threatening. You're lying, you're lying. Mama would never. I found the documents when I was 16. Kaliyah interrupted, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I was looking for my birth certificate for a school trip, and I found a folder hidden in the back of Mama's closet. There were newspaper clippings about a missing baby, police reports, hospital records. And there was a letter Mama wrote but never sent, explaining everything, asking for forgiveness. Where are these documents? Show me. Kaliyah stood and left the kitchen. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the floorboards overhead, the sound of a drawer opening. She returned moments later with a large manila envelope, the edges worn and softened with age. She placed it on the table in front of me. I stared at it, this innocuous envelope that held the truth of my existence, and I was terrified to open it. As long as it remained sealed, I could deny this, could tell myself Kaliyah was mistaken, was lying, was confused. But once I opened it, once I saw the evidence, there would be no going back. My hands shook as I pulled out the contents. The first thing I saw was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, the headline stark and devastating. Newborn vanishes from county hospital. Mother pleads for baby's return. There was a photograph. A young woman, barely more than a girl herself, her face ravaged by tears and exhaustion, holding up a tiny hospital blanket. The caption identified her as Zephyr Aldridge, 21 years old, begging anyone with information to come forward. I looked like her. Not exactly, not perfectly, but there was something in the shape of her face, the set of her eyes, that I recognized from my own reflection. My hands started shaking harder. Keep reading, Kaliyah said softly. There were more clippings. Police investigate missing baby. Case. Hospital security under scrutiny. No leads in infant abduction. The article spanned several weeks, then months, then stopped altogether. The case had gone cold. The baby had never been found. Beneath the clippings were photocopies of hospital records, forms documenting the birth of a baby girl at 2:47 a.m. on August 15th, 1982. My birthday. The birth weight, the length, the details all matched what I had always believed about my entrance into the world. And then there was the letter, written in my mother's distinctive handwriting, the loops and curls I had seen on birthday cards and grocery lists and notes left on the refrigerator. My hands trembled so badly I could barely read it. To whom it may concern, it began. My name is Dorothea Mitchell, and I have committed a terrible sin. On the night of August 15th, 1982, I took a baby from County Hospital. I know that baby belonged to another woman, a woman who was suffering and needed her child, but I was suffering too. I had lost 3 babies to miscarriage, and my husband could barely look at me anymore. When I saw that perfect little girl in all that chaos, something broke inside me. I told myself I was saving her, that her mother couldn't care for her properly, that God had put her in my path for a reason. I know now that I was wrong. I know I stole someone's child, someone's future, someone's heart. I want to make it right, but I don't know how. If I come forward, I will lose her. If I stay silent, she will never know who she really is. I am a coward and a thief, and I pray for forgiveness I don't deserve." The letter wasn't signed. It wasn't dated. It existed in a kind of limbo, a confession without consequence, an admission of guilt that had never been delivered. I set the letter down carefully on the table, as if it might shatter if I handled it too roughly. My whole body felt numb, disconnected from reality. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Why did you keep this secret?" Kaliyah's eyes were wet now, tears streaming freely down her face. "Because I was 16, Imani. I was a kid. I was terrified. Mama found me with the documents and she broke down. She told me everything, told me how much she loved you, how you were her daughter in every way that mattered. She begged me not to tell you, said it would destroy our family. And I believed her. I thought I was protecting you, protecting us." "Protecting me? You let me live a lie for 24 years. I know, and I've carried that guilt every single day. But Mama was right about one thing. This information, this truth, it does destroy things. Look at us right now. Look at what it's doing to you." She was right. I could feel myself fragmenting, pieces of my identity breaking off and floating away. I wasn't Imani Mitchell, daughter of James and Dorothea, sister to Kaliyah. I was someone else, someone stolen, someone who had a mother out there who had spent 42 years wondering, what happened to her baby? "Is she alive?" I asked. "The woman who gave birth to me, is she still alive?" "I don't know. I never tried to find her. I was afraid of what would happen if I did." I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "I need to go. I need to get out of here." "Imani, wait." But I was already moving, grabbing my purse from the counter, fumbling for my keys. I couldn't be in that house anymore, couldn't sit at that table surrounded by the ghosts of a family that had never been real. I heard Kaliyah calling my name as I rushed out the front door, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove with no destination in mind, just the overwhelming need to be anywhere else. I ended up at the public library of all places. It was quiet and anonymous, a place where I could sit and think without the weight of memory pressing down on me. I found a computer terminal in the back corner and sat down, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed the name slowly, Zephyr Aldridge. The search results filled the screen. Articles from 1982 and 1983, the same ones I'd seen in the envelope. But there were others too, more recent. An interview from 5 years ago in a local community newsletter. Woman still searching for daughter taken at birth. I clicked on the link, my heart hammering. The photograph showed a woman in her early 60s, sitting in a modest living room, her hands folded in her lap. She looked tired, worn down by grief and time, but there was something indomitable in her eyes. She wore a simple gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a tiny footprint. The article detailed her 40-year search for her stolen daughter. She had never given up, never stopped believing that someday she would find her child. She attended support groups for parents of missing children. She kept a bedroom in her apartment, prepared for her daughter's return, even after all these years. She lit a candle every year on what should have been her daughter's birthday, my birthday. Tears blurred my vision, and I had to wipe them away to keep reading. She talked about the night her daughter was taken, the chaos and confusion, the desperate search through the hospital. She described waking up from the anesthesia to find her baby gone, the way the nurses and doctors had looked at her with pity and suspicion, as if she had somehow lost her own child through carelessness. She had been alone. The baby's father had abandoned her when she got pregnant. Her own family had disowned her for having a child out of wedlock. She had faced that delivery room alone, and she had left the hospital empty-handed and destroyed. "I named her Serenity," the woman said in the interview, "because I wanted her to have peace in her life, even though mine had been so chaotic. I still call her Serenity when I pray. I talk to her picture every night. I tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her, that I will never stop looking for her, that I love her more than anything in this world." I couldn't read anymore. I closed the browser window and sat there in the dim library, crying silently, my shoulders shaking with the force of my sobs. A librarian approached to ask if I was okay, and I nodded. unable to speak, unable to explain that I had just discovered I was someone's serenity, someone's missing piece, someone's 40-year prayer. I stayed in that library until it closed, researching, reading, trying to piece together the story of a life I should have lived. I found a phone number for a victim advocacy organization that had helped my birth mother, a contact person who might know how to reach her. I wrote it down on a scrap of paper and folded it carefully, tucking it into my wallet like a secret. That night, I couldn't go home. Home didn't feel real anymore. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, a place with stained carpets and flickering lights where no one would ask questions. I lay on the thin mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling, my phone clutched in my hand. Kaliyah had called 17 times. I listened to one voicemail. Imani, please, I know you're hurt and angry and you have every right to be, but please don't shut me out. You're still my sister. That hasn't changed. Nothing can change that. But everything had changed. The woman who had raised me was a kidnapper. The woman who had given birth to me was a stranger. The sister who had stood beside me at every important moment of my life had been lying to my face for more than 2 decades. I called Kaliyah back at 2 in the morning, knowing she would be awake, knowing she would be waiting. I found her, I said without preamble. I found the woman who gave birth to me. Her name is Zephyr. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, are you going to contact her? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. How do you tell someone that their stolen baby is alive? How did you open that wound after 42 years? The same way Mama opened yours, Kaliyah said quietly, with truth, no matter how much it hurts. The next morning, I sat in my car outside the Victim Advocacy Center, the address I had found online programmed into my GPS. It was a small building in a part of town I didn't know well, tucked between a laundromat and a bodega. I had been sitting there for 20 minutes, unable to make myself get out of the car. What would I say? Hi, you don't know me, but I'm the baby someone stole from you 42 years ago. I'm alive, I'm fine, I had a good life, but it wasn't the life you would have given me. My phone rang, startling me out of my spiral. It was a number I didn't recognize, a local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the accept button. Is this Imani Mitchell? The voice was female, older, with a slight rasp that suggested a lifetime of cigarettes or shouting or both. Yes, who is this? My name is Octavia Reeves. I'm a social worker with the Victim Advocacy Center. Someone called yesterday asking about Zephyr Aldridge, and the call was traced back to your number. I'm calling to ask why you're interested in a 42-year-old cold case. My mouth went dry. I hadn't considered that looking for information might trigger some kind of alert, might bring attention I wasn't ready for. I I have information about her case, about her daughter. What kind of information? I closed my eyes. This was it. The moment where I could still turn back, could still pretend I had never found that envelope, never read that letter, never learned the truth about who I was. But even as I thought it, I knew I couldn't live with that lie anymore. The woman who had carried me, who had brought me into this world, who had spent 4 decades searching for me, deserved to know I was alive. I think I'm her daughter. I think I'm the baby who was taken from the hospital. Another long silence. I could hear papers rustling, the sound of typing. Ms. Mitchell, that's a very serious claim. Do you have any evidence to support it? Yes, I have documents, hospital records, a letter of confession from the woman who took me. Everything. I need you to come to the center right now. Don't go anywhere. Don't contact anyone. Just come here immediately. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, my heart racing, and then I got out of the car. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to walk across the parking lot, to pull open the heavy glass door, to approach the reception desk where a young woman with bright purple braids looked up at me with professional interest. I'm here to see Octavia Reeves, she just called me. Name? Imani Mitchell. The receptionist picked up her phone, spoke quietly into it, and then pointed to a door on the left. Through there, second door on the right. The office was small and cluttered, every surface covered with files and folders and photographs of missing people. Behind a metal desk sat a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She stood when I entered, extending her hand. Imani, thank you for coming so quickly. Please sit down. I sank into the chair across from her, and she sat back down, folding her hands on top of a file folder I recognized with a jolt. It had a name written on the tab in faded ink. Aldridge Serenity. My file, my real name. I've been working with Zephyr Aldridge for 20 years, Octavia said without preamble. She's been a client of this center since before I even worked here. Her case is one of the oldest unsolved infant abductions in this state. In all that time, we've never had a credible lead. No one has ever come forward with information. She paused, her eyes searching my face. Until now. I didn't know, I said, my voice cracking. I didn't know I was stolen until 3 days ago. My mother, the woman who raised me, she told me on her deathbed that I was adopted. And then my sister told me the rest. The woman who took you is deceased. Yes, she died the same day she told me the truth. Octavia nodded slowly. That's probably the only reason your sister felt she could tell you. As long as she was alive, your sister was protecting her from prosecution. That thought hadn't occurred to me. Kaliyah hadn't just been protecting me or our family. She had been protecting our mother from prison. What happens now? I asked. Now, we verify your identity. We'll need to do a DNA test to confirm that you are Zephyr's biological daughter. The hospital kept blood samples from the delivery stored specifically in case the baby was ever found. If your DNA matches, then we'll know for certain. And if it matches, then we contact Zephyr and tell her that her daughter has been found, and we let you decide if and when you want to meet her. The DNA test was anticlimactic. A swab on the inside of my cheek, a few questions. About my medical history, a form to sign giving consent for the analysis. Octavia told me the results would take about a week, maybe less if they expedited it, which they would given the circumstances. What should I do in the meantime? I asked. Live your life. Process what you've learned. Talk to someone if you need to. This is traumatic information, and there's no shame in seeking support. I left the advocacy center in a daze and drove back to the motel. I couldn't face going to my apartment, couldn't face the thought of being surrounded by all the things that made up my identity, the photos and books and mementos of a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Kaliyah texted me, "Where are you?" "I'm worried. I'm fine," I replied. "I need some time alone." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. "I understand. I'm here when you're ready." The days that followed were strange and disconnected. I called in sick to work, telling my boss I had a family emergency, which wasn't exactly a lie. I spent hours in that motel room, ordering takeout, watching mindless television, trying not to think about the fact that somewhere in this city, a woman I had never met was living her life with no idea that her missing daughter was about to walk back into it. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Octavia. "We have the results," she said. "Can you come to the center?" I was there in 15 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Octavia met me in the lobby this time, her face carefully neutral. "Let's talk in my office." We walked in silence down the familiar hallway. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit, but I couldn't. I stood there, my whole body tense, waiting for the verdict on my existence. "The DNA is a match," she said simply. "You are Zephyr Aldridge's biological daughter. You are the baby who was taken from County Hospital on August 15th, 1982. I had known, of course, the evidence had been overwhelming, but hearing it confirmed, hearing it stated as scientific fact made it real in a way nothing else had. "What now?" I whispered. "Now I call Zephyr. I tell her we found her daughter, and then, if you're willing, I arrange for the two of you to meet." I nodded, unable to speak. Octavia picked up her phone and dialed a number she clearly knew by heart. I watched her face as she waited for someone to answer, saw the moment when the call connected. "Zephyr, it's Octavia Reeves. I need you to sit down. I have news." I couldn't hear the response, but I saw Octavia's expression soften. "We found her. We found your daughter. She's alive, and she's here." There was a sound from the other end of the line, something between a sob and a scream. Octavia's eyes grew wet, and she turned slightly away from me, giving the woman on the phone a moment of privacy for her grief and joy. I know, she's here with me right now, and she wants to meet you. Can you come to the center? More muffled sounds, agreement, disbelief, questions. 42 years old. Her name is Imani. Yes, yes, I promise this is real. I'll see you soon. Octavia hung up and turned back to me. She's on her way. She'll be here in about 30 minutes. Are you ready for this? No, I said honestly, but I don't think I'll ever be ready. Those 30 minutes were the longest of my life. Octavia brought me water and tried to make small talk, but I couldn't focus on anything except the ticking clock on her wall and the knowledge that my entire world was about to change again. When the knock came on the door, I actually jumped. Come in, Octavia called. The door opened slowly, and a woman stepped into the office. She was smaller than I expected, barely 5 feet tall, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and clothes that looked carefully chosen and carefully maintained. She wore the same necklace from the photograph, the tiny footprint pendant, and her hands shook as she gripped her purse. Our eyes met, and I saw my own face looking back at me. Not exactly, not perfectly, but there was no denying the resemblance. We had the same nose, the same shape to our eyes, the same way of standing with our weight shifted slightly to the left. Serenity? She whispered, the name a prayer and a question. Imani, I corrected gently. My name is Imani. Imani, she repeated, tasting the name, trying it out. It's beautiful. We stood there, 5 feet apart, two strangers who shared blood and bone and nothing else. I didn't know what to say. How do you compress 42 years of living into a single conversation? How do you explain that you had a good life, that you were loved, when that good life was built on the theft and lies? I looked for you every day, she said, her voice breaking. Every single day for 42 years. I never stopped believing I would find you. I didn't know, I said, the words completely inadequate. I didn't know I was missing. Can I? She took a hesitant step forward, her hands reaching out and then pulling back, uncertain. Can I hug you? I nodded, not trusting my voice, and she closed the distance between us. Her arms wrapped around me, and she was so small, so fragile, but her embrace was fierce. She smelled like lavender and soap, unfamiliar and somehow comforting at the same time. I felt her tears soaking into my shoulder, felt her body shaking with the force of her sobs. My baby, she kept saying. My baby, I found you. I finally found you. And I cried too, for the first time since my mother's funeral. I cried for the woman in my arms who had lost so much. I cried for the life I had lived, and the life I had been meant to live. I cried for the mother who had stolen me, and the mother who had spent 42 years searching. I cried for Kaliyah, who had carried the weight of this secret for half her life. I cried for myself, for the girl named Serenity, who had never existed, and the woman named Imani, who no longer knew who she was. When we finally pulled apart, Octavia was quietly crying too, her professional composure cracked by the weight of this reunion. She offered us tissues, and we both laughed through our tears at the absurdity of trying to clean up emotions that couldn't be contained by anything as simple as tissue paper. Tell me everything, Zephyr said, sitting down in the chair next to mine and taking my hand like she was afraid I might disappear again if she let go. Tell me about your life. I want to know everything. And so I told her. I told her about growing up on the South Side, about my father who had died when I was 20, about Kaliyah and our complicated relationship. I told her about my job as a graphic designer, about my tiny apartment that overlooked a park, about my habit of collecting vintage teacups from thrift stores. I told her about my love of reading and my terrible singing voice and the fact that I was allergic to shellfish. She drank in every detail, her eyes never leaving my face, her hand gripping mine like a lifeline. And when I finished, she told me her story. She told me about getting pregnant at 20, about being abandoned by the baby's father, about her family's rejection. She told me about the terrifying delivery, about waking up to find me gone, about the police investigation that went nowhere. She told me about the years of searching, the dead ends, the false leads, The crushing disappointment every time another missing child case was resolved, and it wasn't hers. She told me about the apartment bedroom she had kept ready for me, about the candles she lit every birthday, about the scrapbook she had filled with newspaper clippings and court documents and photographs of other missing children who had been found, because seeing those reunions gave her hope that someday she would have her own. I never gave up, she said fiercely. Everyone told me to move on, to have other children, to accept that you were gone. But I couldn't. A mother knows her child is out there. Something in my heart kept telling me you were alive. I had a good laugh, I said, and then immediately felt guilty for saying it, as if admitting that I had been happy was a betrayal of her suffering. The woman who took me, she loved me. She wasn't she wasn't a monster. She was broken and desperate, and she did a terrible thing, but she loved me. Zephyr's face tightened, and I saw a flash of anger cross her features before she controlled it. She stole you from me. She stole 42 years that we should have had together. I know, I'm not defending what she did. I'm just trying to explain that my life I wasn't abused or neglected. I was loved. I would have loved you too, she said, her voice thick with tears. I did love you. I never stopped loving you. We talked for hours until Octavia gently reminded us that the center was closing and we would need to continue our conversation elsewhere. Zephyr invited me to her apartment, and I found myself agreeing, following her car through streets I didn't know, to a neighborhood that felt both foreign and somehow familiar. Her apartment was small and neat, filled with secondhand furniture and walls covered in photographs. Most of them were of me, or rather of the missing baby poster that had been circulated in 1982. My newborn face, innocent and unaware, stared out from frames of every size and shape. But there were other photos, too. Pictures of Zephyr at different ages, standing in front of the hospital where I had been born, holding candles at vigils for missing children, speaking at awareness events. And then there was the bedroom. She opened the door slowly as if revealing something sacred, and I understood why. It was frozen in time, a nursery prepared for a baby who had never come home, a white crib with mobile of stars and moons hanging above it, a changing table stocked with diapers in a size that would fit a newborn, yellowed with age but still carefully arranged, a rocking chair in the corner with a teddy bear sitting in its seat, waiting. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and there were curtains with little ducks printed on them. I changed the diapers every few years when they started to deteriorate, she said quietly, and I replaced some of the clothes as fashions changed, but I always kept it ready, just in case. I walked into the room slowly, feeling like I was trespassing in a shrine. This was the room where I should have slept as an infant, where I should have been rocked and sung to and loved by this woman who was my mother by birth, if not by experience. The weight of it, the tragedy of it, was almost unbearable. I don't know how to do this, I said, turning to face her. I don't know how to be your daughter when I've spent my whole life being someone else's. I don't know either, she admitted, but maybe we can figure it out together. We ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on her worn couch, and we talked more. She asked about my mother, the woman who had taken me, and I could see how much it cost her to ask those questions, to hear about the woman who had gotten to raise me when she couldn't. I tried to be honest without being cruel, tried to help her understand that the woman who had stolen me had also been a victim. In some ways, a victim of her own grief and desperation and mental illness. The letter she wrote, I said, pulling out my phone to show her the photograph I had taken of it. She knew what she did was wrong. She wanted to make it right, but she didn't know how. Zephyr read the letter slowly, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she handed the phone back to me. She had 42 years to make it right. She could have come forward at any time. She chose not to. She was afraid. I was afraid too. I was terrified every single day, wondering if my baby was alive or dead, safe or suffering, but I didn't get to choose whether to be afraid or not. That choice was taken from me the moment she walked out of that hospital with you. She was right, of course. There was no moral equivalence between the woman who had stolen a child and the woman who had lost one. But I had loved the woman who raised me, had mourned her, and I couldn't simply erase that love because I now knew the truth about how she had become my mother. It was past midnight when I finally left Zephyr's apartment, promising to come back soon, to stay in touch, to begin building some kind of relationship. She hugged me at the door, holding on just a little too long, as if afraid this was all a dream and she would wake up to find me gone again. I drove back to the motel in silence, my mind racing. I had a birth mother now, a woman who wanted to know me, who had been waiting for me for more than 4 decades. But I also had a sister who had lied to me, a family history that was built on theft, and a dead mother whose legacy was now irreparably tainted by the truth of what she had done. The next morning, I finally went home. My apartment felt strange after a week away, like a place that belonged to someone else. I walked through the rooms touching things, my books, my teacups, my photographs, trying to reconnect with the person I had been before my world had shattered. There was a knock on my door around noon. I looked through the peephole and saw Kaliyah standing in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her pieces together. I opened the door. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, and she walked past me into the living room. We stood there awkwardly, two sisters who had shared a lifetime, and now shared nothing but painful truth. "I met her," I said. "I met the woman who gave birth to me." Kaliyah's face crumpled. What is she like?" "She's small, quiet. She spent her entire adult life looking for me. She kept a nursery ready just in case I came home. God, Imani, I'm so sorry for all of it. Are you sorry you didn't tell me, or are you sorry you got caught?" The question hung between us, sharp and accusatory. Kaliyah flinched as if I had struck her. "Both," she said finally. "I'm sorry for both. I was 16 when I found out, and I was scared and confused, and Mama was falling apart. She made me promise, and I kept that promise because I didn't know what else to do. But as I got older, as the years passed, it got harder and harder to tell you. How do you bring up something like that? How do you say, by the way, everything you know about yourself is a lie? You just say it. You find the courage to say it before it's too late for questions, before it's too late for the truth to matter. You're right, you're absolutely right. And I have no excuse. I was a coward. I chose to protect Mama instead of protecting you, and I will regret that. For the rest of my life." I sank down onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know if I can." Kaliyah sat down next to me, not too close, giving me space. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to know that you are my sister. Blood doesn't change that. DNA doesn't change that. You are the person I grew up with, the person who held my hand on my first day of school, the person who stayed up all night with me when my husband left me. Nothing can take that away. But it's all based on a lie. No, it's based on love. Mama stole you, yes, and that was wrong. But she loved you. I love you. That love is real, even if the circumstances that brought us together weren't. I wanted to argue with her, wanted to hold on to my anger because it felt safer than the grief underneath it. But I was so tired, tired of being angry, tired of being hurt, tired of trying to reconcile all the contradictory truths of my existence. "I need time," I said. "Finally, I need time to figure out who I am now, to process all of this. I can't just go back to the way things were." "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." She stood to leave, and I let her go without another word. After the door closed behind her, I sat in my apartment alone and cried again, mourning the simple world where I'd known exactly who I was and where I belonged. Over the next few months, I began the complicated process of building a relationship with Zephyr while trying to figure out what my relationship with Kaliyah would look like going forward. I saw Zephyr twice a week, usually for dinner or coffee, learning about her life and sharing more about mine. She was hungry for details, for all the moments she had missed, and I did my best to fill in the gaps, even though I knew nothing I said could ever make up for the time we had lost. She showed me photographs of myself as a newborn, taken during the brief hours I had been in the hospital before I was stolen. There was one of her holding me, her face radiant with joy and exhaustion, and it broke my heart to think about how quickly that joy had turned to anguish. "You were so beautiful," she said, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. "I counted your fingers and toes over and over. I couldn't believe you were real, that you were mine." "What was the father like?" I asked, a question I had been afraid to voice before. "You said he left when you got pregnant." Her expression darkened. "His name was Marcus. He was charming and handsome and completely wrong for me. When I told him I was pregnant, he accused me of trying to trap him, said the baby probably wasn't even his. I never heard from him again." She paused, then looked at me directly. "Do you want to know who he is? I could try to find him." I thought about it. Somewhere out there, I had a biological father who had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and never looked back. A man who didn't know I existed, who had spent 42 years free from any responsibility for the child he had helped create. No, I decided. He made his choice when he left. I don't need to know him. Zephyr nodded, looking relieved. "I always worried you would want to find him, that I would have to share you with someone who didn't deserve you." "You don't have to share me. I'm here. I'm trying." And I was trying, even though it was hard. Even though every time I called her by her name instead of Mom, I saw the flash of pain in her eyes. Even though every time I mentioned something from my childhood, I had to watch her struggle with the knowledge that those memories belonged to someone else, someone who had stolen them from her. I started seeing a therapist, a woman named Rashida, who specialized in adoptees and identity issues. She helped me work through the complicated grief I felt, the sense that I was mourning my mother while simultaneously being angry at her, loving her while hating what she had done. "You can hold multiple truths at once," Rashida told me during one session. "You can love the woman who raised you and acknowledge that what she did was wrong. You can build a relationship with your birth mother while honoring the childhood you actually had. Human beings are capable of containing contradictions." It was easier said than done, but I tried. I tried to give Zephyr what she needed while also being honest about my own limitations. I couldn't erase 42 years and become the daughter she had imagined. I could only be the person I actually was, shaped by the life I had lived, for better or worse. Kaliyah and I saw each other occasionally, awkward coffee dates where we tried to find our way back to the easy relationship we had once shared. It was slow going. Too much had been broken, too much trust had been shattered, but we were trying, both of us, to salvage something from the wreckage. "Do you think Mama knew she was dying when she told you?" Kaliyah asked during one of these meetings. "Do you think that's why she finally said something?" "I think she was trying to do the right thing in the only way she knew how. She was a coward until the very end, but at least she gave me the truth before it was too late." "Do you hate her?" I considered the question carefully. Did I hate the woman who had stolen me, who had deprived my birth mother of the chance to raise me, who had lied to me for 42 years? Did I hate the woman who had also bandaged my scraped knees, helped me with homework, celebrated my achievements, and loved me with a fierce protective love that had defined my entire childhood? "No," I said finally. "I don't hate her. I'm angry at her. I'm disappointed in her. But I don't hate her. She was broken, and she did a terrible thing, but she was still my mother. That has to count for something." Kaliyah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saying that. Thank you for not making me choose between defending her and supporting you. I can't ask you to hate her. She was your mother too, and she didn't steal. You. Your relationship with her is different from mine, and that's okay." 6 months after my mother's deathbed confession, I sat in a lawyer's office with Zephyr, discussing the possibility of legally changing my name. Not my first name. I had decided to keep Imani, the name I had lived with for more than 4 decades. But my last name, the lawyer had suggested I could take Aldridge, could officially become my birth mother's daughter in the eyes of the law. "What do you want, the lawyer asked me. "This is entirely your decision." I looked at Zephyr, who was trying so hard to keep her expression neutral, to not influence my choice. But I could see the hope in her eyes, the desperate wish that I would choose her, would complete our reunion by taking her name. And I looked at the name written on all my documents, all my official papers, Mitchell, the name of the woman who had stolen me, the name of the family I'd grown up in, the name that represented a lie and also a truth. "I want to keep Mitchell," I said quietly. "I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's who I've been my whole life. Changing it now feels like erasing the person I was, and I can't do that. I won't do that." Zephyr's face fell, but she recovered quickly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I understand. You have to do what feels right for you. But I could see she was hurt, could see the disappointment that she tried to hide behind a brave smile, and I felt guilty for hurting her, for choosing the name of my kidnapper over hers, even though I knew intellectually that it was my choice to make, my identity to define. That night, I called Kaliyah and told her about the decision. You kept our name, she said, her voice thick with emotion. It's my name, too, for better or worse, it's who I am. Does this mean you forgive me? Does this mean we can try to be sisters again? I don't know about forgiveness, but I think we can try to be something. Not what we were before, but something new, something honest. I'll take it, she said. I'll take whatever you can give me. A year after my mother died, I organized a small memorial service at her grave. Just me, Kaliyah, and a few of her close friends who didn't know the truth about what she had done. We stood in the cemetery under gray skies, and I placed flowers on her headstone. I'm still angry at you, I said quietly, speaking to the ground where she lay. I'm angry at what you did, at what you took from all of us, but I also understand that you were hurting, that you were desperate, that you made a terrible choice in a moment of weakness. I hope you found peace. I hope you're not suffering anymore. And I hope someday I can think about you without this knot in my chest. Kaliyah put her arm around me, and this time I didn't pull away. We stood there together, two sisters bound by love and lies, mourning a woman who had been both a criminal and a mother. That evening, I had dinner with Zephyr at her apartment. She had started cooking my favorite foods, asking me for recipes and preferences, trying to create new traditions that belonged to us. Tonight she had made pot roast, and the smell filled her small kitchen with warmth. I never told you what I was planning to name you, she said as we sat down to eat. Before you were born, I had a name picked out. Serenity, I said. I read it in the newspaper article. She shook her head. That was my second choice, the name I gave them for the posters. But my first choice, the name I had whispered to you while I was pregnant, was Imani. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. What? Imani. It means faith in Swahili. I chose it because I had faith that somehow, despite everything, we would both be okay. And here you are, with that name, like the universe was trying to bring us back together all along. I didn't know what to say. Of all the coincidences, of all the impossible connections, this one felt the most impossible. The woman who had stolen me had given me the exact name my birth mother had chosen, as if somehow, in some inexplicable way, she had known. Did she know? I asked. Could she have known what name you picked? I don't see how. I never told anyone except the baby's father, and he was gone. Unless, she trailed off, her eyes widening. Unless she heard me. I was in labor for 16 hours before they gave me the epidural. I was talking to you the whole time, telling you your name, promising you the world. If she was working that night, if she was in and out of the room, she could have heard me. The thought made my skin crawl. The woman who would steal me had been there, listening, learning my name, perhaps planning her theft, even as my birth mother labored to bring me into the world. She heard you, I said with certainty. She heard you, and she took that from you, too. She took your daughter and your daughter's name. Zephyr reached across the table and took my hand. But the name fits you. When I look at you, I see Imani. I see faith. Faith that survived 42 years of separation. Faith that brought you back to me. I squeezed her hand. This woman who was learning to be my mother. This stranger who shared my blood and now, finally, shared my name. I'm glad I found you, I said, and I meant it. I wish it had been sooner. I wish things had been different, but I'm glad we have now. So am I, baby. So am I. We finished dinner and washed dishes side by side, and it felt almost normal, almost like what a mother and daughter should be, and maybe that was enough. Maybe we didn't need to reclaim the past or erase the pain. Maybe we just needed to be present with each other, building something new from the broken pieces of what should have been. Later that night, as I drove home through the city streets, I thought about identity and family and the complicated truths that define us. I thought about the two mothers I had, one who had stolen me and one who had lost me, and how both of them had shaped who I was. I thought about Kaliyah, my sister by circumstance rather than blood, and how our relationship was slowly healing, even if it would never be the same. I thought about the name Imani, which meant faith, and I realized that faith was what I needed now. Faith that I could contain all these contradictions. Faith that I could love the woman who raised me while acknowledging the wrong she did. Faith that I could build a relationship with my birth mother while honoring my past. Faith that Kaliyah and I could find our way back to something resembling sisterhood. Faith that someday the anger and pain would fade, leaving only the complicated love that had always been there underneath. I pulled into my apartment parking lot and sat in the car for a moment, looking up at my window where the lights I had left on glowed warm against the dark. This was my home. This was my life. It wasn't the life I was supposed to have, but it was mine, shaped by choices I didn't make and circumstances I couldn't control. But it was also shaped by choices I was making now. The choice to know the truth, the choice to build relationships with both Zephyr and Kaliyah, the choice to honor my complicated past while moving toward a future I couldn't yet imagine. I got out of the car and walked toward my building, my keys jingling in my hand, and I thought about faith. Not the religious kind, though I supposed that was part of it too, but the kind of faith that keeps you moving forward even when you don't know where you're going. The kind of faith that believes things can get better even when everything is broken. The kind of faith that my birth mother had carried for 42 years, believing against all odds that she would find her daughter. That kind of faith was my birthright, the one true thing that connected me to the woman who had named me. And maybe in the end, that was enough. Maybe faith was the bridge between who I had been and who I was becoming, between the daughter who was stolen and the woman who was found, between all the fractured pieces of my identity that I was slowly learning to hold together. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, closing it behind me, and I whispered to myself, Imani, faith. And for the first time since my world had shattered, I felt something like hope. Did you like the story? Which city are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. On the screen, you can see 2 new stories that I highly recommend. And there's so much more on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story with my love and respect.